How's it going, Dowell? From a general sense, if you have to start a freshman out there, especially on offensive line where so much of the game can hinge, I don't know if trepidation is the right word, but are there some concerns about, is this guy ready? How do you treat it as a freshman?
Yeah, there's always those questions. I think it pushes coaches to be slow to pull the trigger at times. And sometimes, it's funny, you're like, hey, 2 weeks ago he wasn't ready, but then you throw him out there against Georgia and he plays well. It's like and it's not because most of the time as a coach, you're thinking about what's best for them long term. You don't want to hurt someone's confidence and put them out there before they're ready. There's also the fine line of a coach being able to pull the trigger and play the freshman. And, we talked about it last week. It's like they're going to bite when they're young. And, there's no value on experience. So for Tree to get put in that situation, to be the two-time defending national champions on the road in that atmosphere and a game of that magnitude, to go out and play the way he did. I know that in the quarterback room, Spence was really fired up to watch the tape, and we were as a staff. And there's a tremendous amount of room for growth, but he's got a chance to be a really good player.
Dell, so far this offense, especially in the pass game, has been really explosive. Outside of those explosive plays, what do you want to see next when those chunk plays aren't coming just from an efficiency standpoint?
Yeah, I think the avoiding ways to hurt ourselves, avoiding ways to win games, you have to first find ways not to lose them. And when you look at penalties, sacks, and those things, we've been, until late in that game, the first group has been really good about the ball security, which is something we preach around here. But it's the 8 penalties on offense, like the inconsistencies, those things. We have 3 false starts, you have runs called. And all of a sudden, it just gets behind the sticks, and there's not great calls for 1st and 15 and 2nd and 15 and 1st and 20. So it's playing smart. It's eliminating the things that hurt you as an offense. We are talented. We have some skill guys we have a quarterback that are going to make explosive plays because they're talented players, but we can't hurt ourselves and play that game of it's the Omega. It was 3rd and 15, we make an explosive, then it's boom, boom, and then we get an explosive called back. It's we need more consistency, and that starts with eliminating the self-inflicted wounds.
This offense has started fast all 3 weeks. You got a first quarter long touchdown drive. In your mind, what is the key to starting fast for an offense, and how do you kind of make sure that sticks for 4 quarters?
Yeah, well, when you're doing your openers, you have things that you're breaking tendencies. You've got a good feel of what they're going to do. You've also had a chance to prepare your players all week from about Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They know what the first 8 to 15 plays of the game are going to be. So I think that knowledge builds confidence. Confidence allows them to play fast. Now when you have young players and there's adjustments getting made and those things, it's all right, now we're off a script, and you got to be able to, all right, they're doing this, we're doing this. And there was a lot of back and forth in the Georgia game last week. They're making checks, we're making checks. In the passing game, we're going back and forth with those guys that way. And I think it's when the game starts unraveling, you see how they're attacking you, you're trying to figure out how you're attacking them. And it's being able to make those adjustments cleanly and be able to handle, okay, now we're off the script, guys, and you got to go play football.
Dale, I know there's multiple factors that go into making decisions as to who's going to be on the field at a certain time, especially at the running back position. I know Mario played a little bit more of this past weekend, but what can he do more to be able to get on the field, and how much of DK's impact in making a difference on his pass protection, how much difficult does that make it, whether it be Mario or any other running back?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it, and obviously you have a pretty good feel for that as well, because you're accurate with DK. When the last 2 games, the 2 top 25 teams we've lost to, they've become in the lopsided scores in the fourth quarter or second half. You're down 7, you're down 10, you're throwing the football more. DK is a really good pass protector. He understands that stuff, and a lot of our decisions come based on practice. And when guys practice well and they do it for a week, and you're gonna get to play more. It's not look, if there was coaches are gonna play the best players because our jobs are on the line, and we depend on having the best players out there. So you can count on, and the players can count on, whoever has the best week of practice and whoever's trending in the right direction will play. And if someone's not playing, there's something not going on, that either the player's not meeting the expectation of the coach, or the player's expectations of himself are not high enough. And that's how depth chart decisions get made. And Mario has demonstrated the ability to create some stuff in the run game for us. That's why he's playing a little bit more. And if he continues to do those things, he will continue to play more. We trust DK. We trust DK in knowing the whole thing, the whole system, the pass protections, the being able to flex out and run routes, be able to, run the football and do those things. Like it's not just a trust factor from the coaches. He's demonstrated the fact that he can do it. He can, like, mentally he can figure those things out.
Seems like came into the season expecting the tight ends to make some very impactful plays in the receiving game. Haven't really seen a whole lot of that yet through 3 games. What do you make of how they've performed so far this year, and what's the next step for them?
Yeah, I think that those guys understand their roles, and I think that there was a time when when we're trying to figure out who we are. We have 2 talented tight ends and a room full of tight ends, but 2 guys that play a lot. But when you get drawn into pass protection and you're in more 7-man protections than you imagine you would be in to start the season, just to settle down the offensive line, settle down the running backs, make sure that Spencer's comfortable, that their role changes from pass receivers to, now they're nudging, chipping, helping tackles and pass protection. When you nudge and chip, it's hard to go. You're not the primary target now. Now you've become 3rd and 4th in the progression. So it's some of that becomes with, trying to help other positions and try to settle things down that need to be settled down. Both those guys understand the role. They know exactly their production, their stat line in the newspaper on the day after the game is not what they would love it to be, but they also understand why and what their roles are.
Dowell, I know you didn't coach him last year, but Spencer's numbers against pressure last year are vastly worse than what they are this year. How have you seen him adjust to that and being able to handle pressure a little bit better than maybe he did last year?
I think it's understanding of all credit goes to him. He set out on a mission this year to have a good year, and we're 3 games into this thing, and to this point, I think I'd speak for most of the people that are pretty darn happy with how he's played. But it's understanding defenses more. It's understanding coverages and protections more. He worked really hard to understand protections this offseason. It was a big emphasis for him. He wanted to do that. It's not something they did a ton of at Oklahoma. And so he wanted to get in those 6-man protections and understand those things and understand 5-man empty protections and be able to make adjustments off of them and knowing where your problems are. Like, that comes down to you're not surprised. Like, because he understands his problems. He understands where the ball has to go in those problems, and he has solutions for them. So I think that I think it's settled him down. One thing that we talked about in the Georgia game, like the keys to victory, we talked about him individually. We told him he needed to stretch his drops and he needed to keep his eyes downfield and sit in there and make throws. And there was going to be colors flashing around him, but we didn't care about that. We needed him to stare down the barrel and make freaking plays for us. And you go to 3rd and 10 and Knox nudges a guy, runs a great route, and he drops the ball in the 3rd and 10. But that, to me, is where Spencer has grown as a player. Like, he stares down the barrel. He sticks it right between his numbers right there in a critical time in that game. And would have picked up a first down. Unfortunately, we didn't catch it. But 7 was fearless in that thing. I think that he's realized, like, I can't move every time I see color. I need to sit in there, sit on the spot, stare down the barrel, and make the freaking throws. And that's what he's been doing. And I think it's a combination of understanding protections, understanding coverages, being fearless in the pocket, and he's put a lot of good stuff on tape.
Shane said after the game Saturday, he told Trovon Ball he needed to get him in the game more. What was your assessment on his snaps, and do you envision him playing more Saturday?
Trovon's a guy I'm super fired up about. I think I've mentioned him a couple times. Like, those young linemen, I like all of our linemen, but I love Tro. And Tro, the moment's not too big for him. He's going to be a really good player here, a really good player, just like Tree is, and just like Marquis when he's healthy. They're going to be really, really good. And Tro's earned the right to play more, and he will play. I think Coach Beamer's already commented on that, and he'll play because not just because he's a good player, but he's also ready. Like, he's shown that he's ready. He's demonstrated that for us. He's put it on tape, and he's a guy that needs to continue to play for us.
Dowell, what have you seen from Mississippi State on film, and how difficult is it to plan for that 3-3-5 defense they run?
Yeah, being in Arkansas 2 years, I got to see them twice. We beat them once, and then they beat us last year. We didn't have KJ, but it's a defense that definitely it's different. It's different than any structure. It's hard to mimic that at practice without scout looks. And then even when you go scout looks, it's just hard to mimic the full speed, the way they attack. And they're a good team. I mean, they've got good players. The front's really good. The 2 linebackers are really good players. And it's a scheme that's unique, and they're going to attack and be aggressive. So we're going to have a really good challenge, a different challenge than we had last week. But every Saturday in the SEC is a challenge. But now it's going to be a different challenge for the run game and protections, and because it's so unique. And you see this type of style. It goes back to Rocky Long, this style of defense, and even further back to Joe Lee Dunn and that tree of coaches. And they do a really good job affecting the quarterback.
To follow up on that, just what about what they do in terms of blitzing and that affects protections and can make it tricky for an offensive line to
number one, I think the head coach calls the defense, and when you're a defensive head coach that gets to call the defense, you're you have the ability to be ultra aggressive because you answer to yourself only, which is like guilt-free play calling, which is awesome. Like you can do whatever you want at that point. But it's the way the 3-3, the structure of the defense is just different, and it unfolds differently. And people play odd front. The mint front with the 4 eyes is a in vogue thing because of the Saban tree guys. And this guy's, it goes back to like Joe Lee Dunn. It's more 3-down structure with the ability to play 4-down, and just the way they internally attack protections. And it's a lot of it is internal. They have a cross dog, and they're going to add a safety or nickel to it. But the internal games create a lot of pressure. And it's, whether you play offense, defense, or special teams, the whole thing comes down to creating pressure on people. Whether it's through protection, whether it's us in the passing game, they're trying to create pressure on our run game, and that's what makes ultimately a very broad stroke term is they create pressure on your offensive line and running backs and tight ends and protection and the run game.
You have a lot of wide receivers who are playing well, but Shane mentioned needing to get Nick and Tyshawn in there a little bit more. Where do things stand with that? And then also Elijah Caldwell is a guy who was somebody who earned a lot of praise during the camp portion of practice, but haven't seen him yet. How's he coming along? Is he healthy?
Well, boy, it was nice to have 3 and 17 out there for the series, the first half last week. And it was awesome. What a drive for those guys, and just have 2 guys going. And now we do have guys that are young. They're good players. Caldwell's a guy that's worked hard that Spencer talked about in the spring, and he's going to continue to get better and learn stuff. And it's not like when we say learn stuff, it's not like, hey, you got to learn the system, because he can come draw it on the board for you guys. He knows the system. But now there's nuances of a brand new defense, a brand new coverage. You're playing the slot. You have to understand the nuances of how this nickel plays, how the leverages are. And it's not what to do, it's how to do it. And it's same with Nick and Tyshawn. Like, they know the system. They can go out there and they can run how we call 4 verts. They can do those things. It's knowing what to do, know how to do it, and then go do it under pressure. They know what to do. All right, they're learning how to do it. It's like it's the same process with Tree. It's like, okay, you get 2 jet protection. You get 3 jet protection. That's great. But now the adjustments off of it and how it's going to unfold, and you got to do it under pressure. So it's a process of getting those guys out there as fast as we can, but making sure they're ready for the moment when they are, because it's not just them doing their jobs. Like, Spencer counts on them to be where they're supposed to be in the timing of the play, and the offensive line is blocking for, if it's a 3-1 hitch throw and this route's supposed to be at 6 yards, if it's at 8, then he's either progressing or he's taking hit or he's holding on to a throw. So there's just those details of how to do it that we got to expedite these guys fast, because they need to play and they need to help us. And we're throwing the ball more than probably we'd even like to right now, to be completely honest. But you play to your strengths. And right now we're a good throwing team. We can't live like this the whole year, and we're going to need these young players to step up. Some of our best talent is our young talent here. There's no question about that. And we, as coaches, we are in overtime mode to get all these young players ready to play, because we need them now. And we're not talking about redshirt years, and we're not talking about 3 weeks, and we're not talking about the bye. We're talking about this week. And I think those guys feel the intensity of it. And when the head coach starts saying stuff in the media like that, you guys feel the intensity of it. We got to get these young guys, these talented young players out there to play as well. Appreciate you guys.